members and officers. This is the Planning Committee meeting on Thursday the 22nd of February 2024 at 4 p.m. May I remind everyone present that the meeting is being live streamed as well as recorded via the internet, and this recording archived for future viewing. Could all participants please mute themselves when not speaking in order to avoid any background noise or feedback when other participants are speaking. If a participant wishes to speak, can they please raise their hand in person if they're sat in the chamber, or use the remote raise hand function. If a participant raises their hand via the remote function and is not subsequently invited to speak by myself, please could they turn the camera on to indicate or place a message in the chat function. When invited to address by the chair, please could all participants ensure that their microphone and camera is on to ensure that they can be seen and heard when actively participating. If this is not possible for any reason, please bring this to the attention of the chair, to myself and or Democratic Services Officer as soon as possible. If for any technical reason any person party to the proceedings is unable to hear, then the meeting may be adjourned for a short time to allow contacts to be made. It's important to remember that all parties must hear all the proceedings unless they themselves decide to leave. For the sake of the recording, please ensure that all debate is raised verbally and not via the chat function. The chat function may be used to highlight any technical issues and or to grab my attention or that of the Democratic Services Officer. If any participant has any difficulty hearing or being heard when they're addressing the committee, they should let the chair, myself, or the Democratic Officer know. So we'll start with agenda item 1, which is apologies for absence.
Councillor Champion, Chair.
Just any other apologies for absence that we know of? Councillor Johnson.
Councillor Cowp is delayed and hopes to be with us soon. As we in the room can't actually see who's online, I'd be grateful if we can be updated by Democratic Services if and when she arrives. Thank you.
Okay. Agenda item. I see no other hands for apologies for absence, so we move on to agenda item 2, minutes of the meeting held on the 25th of January 2024. Yeah, thank you.
Move. Yeah.
Moved and seconded. Agenda item 3, declarations of interest, the nature of such interests under the Council's Code of Conduct. Most of us, I think, have to declare an interest on agenda items 2023-0032 full and 2023-0033 full, in that these Barry Biomass has come before the committee a number of times, and we've all had the opportunity to speak or contribute or vote on these matters in the past, but I don't think that that precludes myself from participating and voting at this time. But I'm wondering whether anyone else has any items. Councillor Johnson, I think yours.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Chair. I'll just give people a moment to put their headphones on.
That's what I'm just saying.
Okay, apologies. Apologies, a number of people haven't been speaking with me in the room before now, so this may be the first time for them to use the simultaneous interpretation equipment, so that leads to a little bit of a delay sometimes. So could you please confirm that everybody in the room is able to hear and follow the proceedings? Thank you. Thanks very much. And the Chair appears to be having some difficulty at the moment, and the officer is currently assisting to make sure the Chair can hear me speaking. Okay, thanks very much. Okay, so I would like to declare an interest, as the Chair stated, in applications 2023-00032 FUL and 2023-00033 FUL in relation to the incinerator and Barry Docks, I have made a number of public comments on the site over many years, over 16 years actually, since the application was originally began, and I called these two applications in to the committee for detailed and thorough discussion. And of course, as I do as a member of this committee, I consider these applications with fresh eyes, and I'm also going to listen to all the evidence that we have before the committee today prior to making any decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Go.
Thank you, Chairman. The two items relating to the Barry biomass. I have previously voted on this scheme a number of times, including the deciding decision in 2015, but I will be looking at this scheme with a new pair of eyes, and I think I have no issue with being in on this vote. Thank you.
Next up, I think we've got Councillor Wilson.
Thank you very much, Chair. I would also like to declare an interest in 2023/00032 FUL and also 2023/00033 FUL. As I have spoken about these matters previously, I will look at these matters afresh and not be guided by what I've been said before on these applications. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Ernest. Councillor Ernest? No, we still can't hear you, Anthony. Sorry about this. Moving on then, Councillor Perks. Councillor Perks.
Hi, Chair. Sorry, Chair. Yes, I'd like to declare an interest in planning applications 2023/0032 FUL and 2023/00033 FUL. I've previously spoken on these matters both as at Barry Town Council and Planning Committee during last administration and on this committee during this administration. But obviously, I will look at these applications with fresh eyes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perks. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. I've been on this planning committee for several years now, so I've seen these the biomass plants come through several times. So on the applications 2023 00032 and 00033, I have spoken and made a decision on these. However, I will look at these two applications before us today afresh. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Drake.
I too have to declare an interest in 2023/00332 full and 2023/00033 full. I too have spoken on this and many times as this application has been hanging around for since when it first was on the cards in 2008. So I will look at it with fresh eyes again.
Thank you. Who's next? Councillor Cave.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, like the previous members of this committee, I've been on the committee for 7 years now, and I come to the committee with fresh eyes in respect of application 2023 32 and 33, as previously mentioned by the other members. And as I say, I come with fresh eyes and I'll look at this application in that way again.
Thank you. Councillor Bruce.
I don't believe I've spoken about this before, but I will look at everything now with fresh eyes on 00023 and 0033.
Thank you. Councillor Buckley. Councillor Buckley.
Sorry, Chair. Having looked at both the Cosmeston Farm and the biomass applications in the past with both Penarth Town Council and Vale, I will look at everything with fresh eyes and not be prejudged.
Thank you very much. And going back to Councillor Ernest.
Chairman, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Congratulations.
Oh, good. Right. Well, I hope it lasts. Thank you, Chairman. Can I just declare on the 2 biomass applications, they've only been in front of me once before, I think in the last 12 months. But again, like other members, I will carefully reassess and listen again to the debate on them.
Thank you very much. I think that's all the declarations. Could those with their hands up now put their hands down? It's Councillor Cave and Buckley. You both got your hands up. Thank you. Right, moving on. Agenda item 4, building regulations, applications and other building control matters determined by the Head of Sustainable Development under delegated powers. These are for noting. Can I ask for a mover and seconder?
Happy to note, Chairman.
Thank you very much. And seconded as well. Thank you very much. Agenda item 5, planning applications determined by Head of Sustainable Development under delegated powers. Again for noting. Could I ask?
Happy to note, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Hodges, and thank you, Councillor Johnson. Agenda item 6, appeals. Liam, I think you're taking this.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll take you through this. If we just wait for the presentation to come on screen, and then there we go. So yes, for members' benefit, there's a couple of appeal decisions in your report. One relating to a property called Fossil Cottage at Marcross, and then another appeal relating to an enforcement notice. Both appeals dismissed. So I'll just, like before, just go through the key issues in the appeals. So you can see there on the slide the property in question. It's a 2-storey barn effectively used as a holiday let in Marcross. So in a countryside location. So the key issues for the inspector in this case were looking at the sustainable, whether the site was in a sustainable location. So policy MD11 came into play. So that policy effectively relates to existing rural buildings in the countryside. Makes clear that proposals to convert buildings into a new residential use will need to have demonstrated location of the site is sustainable in terms of access to local facilities, public transport, community facilities, etc. In this instance, the inspector agreed with the council that the site wasn't in a sustainable location. It was effectively, you can see on the picture there, there's a track leading up to it from the road, and the road was poorly lit. Effectively a single track country lane as well. So the inspector agreed with the council on that front. A second criteria as well of policy MD11 is that you are supposed to market a property if you are seeking permission for a full permanent residential dwelling. So the applicant hadn't submitted any marketing information to sort of test whether the property could be used as a holiday let by somebody else or a different use that would be more appropriate in the countryside. So good decision for the council. As I say, that was dismissed. Second decision here relates to a piece of land off St Athan Road, 10 new barn holdings. You can see the top image there taken off the applicant's submission actually from 2001, shows the nature of the land surrounding the property. You can see the red line area, which was the land subject to the enforcement notice that we issued. And the middle picture really sort of sets the scene in terms of how the land was used. So storage of a lot of vehicles and scrap parts and structures, etc. And then you can see that in the photos. So the council served an enforcement notice, and as set out in your report, the inspector has agreed and dismissed the appeal, so upheld the enforcement notice. The one thing they did do is change the time period for compliance. So I believe it was originally 4 months to comply, but I think the inspector pushed that up to 6 months. So yeah, another good decision there.
Thank you very much, Liam. Any questions on that? No. This for noting. I move we note. Councillor Hodges, thank you for seconding. Councillor Perry, you have your hand up. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, just to come in. Yeah, how long does it take from the appeal notice being issued to arriving at planning committee? Because I'm aware of another one which the appeal was upheld, but it's not in the documentation. So it could be that it's come just a little bit too late for that.
Yeah, through you, Chair. There are a number of other decisions being received, but these papers are prepared in advance of this committee meeting, so those will come at the next meeting effectively, and we'll do the same thing. But yeah.
Thank you.
Right, we move on to agenda item 7, trees, 1 delegated list. Again, this is for noting. Thank you, Councillor Hodges. Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Any twitch, Nick? We move then on to enforcement, and I believe this is you, Sarah Feist.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I don't know whether we can get the presentation up that Liam had prepared. Thank you. So this report seeks authorisation to issue an enforcement notice in respect of a timber-clad building and other items on the land. The land consists of a small field located east of Middle Hill. It's approximately half a mile east of Langcarfen. Our investigation was undertaken following a complaint that the land and buildings were being used for leisure purposes. As set out in the report, the current breaches include the construction of a general purpose outbuilding. The council granted planning permission in 2018 for a simple, stable block on the land, but our investigation has confirmed that the building constructed is not in accordance with approved plans. You see the pictures there of the building that's being constructed. So externally, new openings have been added and a UPVC door to the rear. And internally, the building has also been insulated with plasterboard and split into 3 separate rooms containing tools, materials, and other miscellaneous items. So the owner has attempted to regularise the external alterations by submitting a non-material amendment application, which was approved last year. However, the building is not used as a stable and is being used in association with the use of the site as a leisure farming plot. It's therefore considered that as the original consent has not been implemented, it doesn't benefit from planning permission. There's also the risk that if further action is not taken to regularise the position, the existing building would become lawful after 4 years and therefore immune from any enforcement action. This would mean that there would be no control over the future use of the building and it could be used for leisure or commercial purposes. So the current breaches also include a caravan and 2 storage containers sited on the land. The owner has stated that the caravan is required as a welfare unit for anyone working on the site, and the containers are required to provide storage for tools and machinery that could be stolen if they're kept in the timber building. However, given the lack of agricultural activity on the land, we don't consider there's any justification for the containers or the caravan. And in relation to the action we've taken, we've been corresponding with the owner of the land and his agent and held several site meetings. The landowner claims that the tools and equipment are being kept inside the building as it is not complete and he has not commenced its use as a stable. The building we approved, however, was a simple timber structure, stable, which would provide shelter for horses. So it would have been capable of providing shelter for any livestock without being insulated and made double skinned. A small number of sheep were seen grazing in the field during site visits undertaken in December 2022 and April 2023. However, all livestock was taken off the land prior to the summer of last year, and no livestock was seen during visits in June, August and October. During a recent visit in January this year, only 5 sheep were seen on the land. So given the lack of any agricultural activity being undertaken and its sporadic use for the grazing of livestock, it appears to be used as a remote leisure plot in the countryside. And there's no agricultural justification for the building containers or caravan to be sited on the land. So we're therefore recommending enforcement action, and that would be to demolish the wooden clad outbuilding, to remove the 2 metal storage containers and the caravan from the land, and to remove all of the demolition materials. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Sarah. Any questions on this? Any discussion? I see no hands and none in the chamber. We're asking for the head of legal services to be authorised to issue an enforcement notice under Section 172 of the Town and Country Planning Act to require demolish the wooden clad outbuilding, including all internal partition walls, plasterboard and insulation, permanently remove the 2 metal storage containers and canopy structure that spans between them from the land, permanently remove the caravan from the land, and remove all demolition materials and other items from the land following the carrying out of steps 1 to 3. And 2, in the event of non-compliance with the notice, authorisation is also sought to take such legal proceedings as may be required. Is this agreed? Yes. I have that moved by Councillor Hodges,
Happy to move, yeah.
Seconded by Councillor Perks. Thank you very much. Anyone against? Then I take that as agreed.
Chair.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Perks, yes.
Sorry, Chair, to interrupt. Just to say that Councillor Gilligan is having problems. It says that she's in the meeting, but she can't actually. She isn't actually in the meeting. And Councillor Payne is having difficulty logging in. I wondered whether those could be resolved so that they can join into the next item.
Thank you very much. Can we wait for a few seconds while you try and get them in? And while we're about it, Councillor Cowp has joined us. So we just pause to give those 2 a chance to get in. While we're waiting, Councillor Cowp, do you have any declarations of interest to make? Councillor Cowp. Councillor Stallard, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I dropped off the call as well, but I'm back now, so I have nothing to declare.
Okay.
Should we finish off this item?
Yeah. Which one is that?
The enforcement that we agreed.
It's agreed. It's been moved. No one against.
Okay.
Moved by Nick and seconded by Sandra. Any success with the other 2?
Just resent the invites, Chair, so you can try and rejoin, but I'll go and speak to them and direct it, so we might have to start that.
Sorry. Yeah. Sorry about the delay. Okay. Right. Democratic Services will ring the two who are trying to get in now. We'll carry on, I think, with Brigham Farm. So this is one for you, Steve.
Thanks, Chairman. If we could just share the slides. Just wait a minute. So the application relates to land at Brigham Farm, which, as you can see on the plan in front of you, is just to the south of the M4 on the road that leads to Lanharry. So the site itself is a hard-standing, concrete hard-standing area used as part of the farm. The main farm buildings are to the east, and the actual application site is to the west. If we just go to the next slide. So the application is a retrospective application. It has been with us some time to retain the existing tank that's been built, which you can see in front of you. The tank is used for fertiliser storage, and that's the storage of anaerobic digestate. The tank is circular in shape with a diameter of 26 metres and a height of 3 metres. It's constructed from steel mesh with a plastic liner. There's also a floating cover on top of it and can hold up to 1,246 cubic metres of liquid. The tank is filled and emptied by tankers via a piped connection. So, as the report says, the application has been with us quite some time. From a visual impact point of view, and from a highways point of view, we have no concerns. It's the sort of building you'd expect to see in a farmyard. Members can probably see the farm buildings, and there's wrap bales of hay and farm machinery, etc. So, in terms of the impact on the character of the area, it is acceptable. So that the main issue and concern that officers have is following discussions with Natural Resources Wales and in respect particularly of environmental protection. So policy MD7 of our LDP seeks to ensure that development proposals demonstrate that they wouldn't have an acceptable impact. And one of those criteria is on identified risk to public health and safety and land contamination and also pollution of land, surface water, groundwater. So members might want to view page 51 and 52 of the report, which really sets out NRW's concerns in relation to the application. So in summary, they requested more information. Some more information was submitted, but as the application stands, so firstly, they wanted some information in relation to ensure that the storage tank met the construction standards of the Water Resources Regulations Act. And second to that, they also felt that it was an elevated pollution risk. And they also wanted secondary means of containment in case of a spill. So just to summarise, really, to date, we haven't had that information, and NRW have continued to objected to the application because it wouldn't meet their standards. Say ordinarily, planning applications and the planning system wouldn't seek to control legislation that falls outside of planning legislation, but in this case, effectively the legislation's aligned because of NRW's concern in relation to potential unacceptable pollution risk that's been identified, which directly aligns with our own LDP policies. As in the previous matter you've just heard, this application has been the structure has been in place for nearly 4 years, so it's not far off being immune from enforcement action. So as officers now, we need to take a stance on this. We can't wait for any sort of further information. So the recommendation is to refuse the application based on the lack of technical supporting information being submitted, and also seek authorisation to serve an enforcement notice, to seek removal of the storage tank and any associated structures, and also in the event of any non-compliance with the notice, the authorisation is also sought to take such legal proceedings as may be required. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Any members of the committee have any comments or questions? Councillor Hodges.
Thank you, Chair. I'm assuming that we're doing this so that we force the landowner to come forward with the information that is lacking for NRW. I take it that if this information then does come, that it'll be NRW who make the determination over acceptability?
Steve, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, well, it's kind of both, really. I mean, they need to comply with NRW's own regulations as much as ours, so it's kind of a kind of tandem approval. But I guess in the first instance, the concern is, for example, if we were to make another 2 or 3 months, this would be exempt from any action, which is obviously a concern for us, and the potential pollution risk should the tank in future break. So, I mean, obviously, as in all cases with enforcement action, there's a period of compliance with the notice, and should, for example, an application be resubmitted and the information is acceptable to ourselves and NRW, then potentially there is a way forward. But say as the application stands, due to the unforeseen risks, we need to take action at this point.
Thank you, Steve. Do you want to come back?
In that case, Chairman, I'm more than happy to move enforcement action. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cowpe, you have your hand up.
Yes, Chair, thank you. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you. We can't see you.
Right,
Now we
I've
can.
turned my...
Now we can.
Yeah, sorry, I have my camera off, and I just wanted to check that you can hear me, and to say that I had no declarations of interest. I did read the email, and I don't have anything to declare.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions on this item? It's been moved. It's been seconded by Councillor Johnson. Are anybody opposed? In that case, I assume we are all in agreement with the recommendations. Thank you very much on that. Moving on to agenda items, on to the next matter, which is the landed up at Cosmiston Farm 2020/01170/out. Rob, I think you're taking us through this.
I am indeed, Chair. Thank you ever so much. Liam, could you share the slides, please?
Actually, before we go on, just to draw everyone's attention to the fact that there were a considerable number of late reps on this item, and on the next 3 items as well, which came out this morning. I hope everyone's had a chance to read them. Some of them were quite long. Okay. Go on, Rob.
Thank you. Yeah, no, sorry, I was just waiting for the slides there. So this is an outline planning application with all matters reserved except for access for the development of a site for up to 576 dwellings, a primary school, community space and public open space. The application has been submitted with an environmental statement. The site comprises of 25 hectares of land at the southern edge of Penarth, but is within the Sully ward. To the opposite side of the road, as can be seen from the map here, is Cosmiston Country Park with established residential development to the north. Next slide, please, Liam. So the majority of the site here, just to take a small step back, you can see again the relationship with Cosmiston Country Park to the opposite side of the road, and the existing development here to the right-hand side. To the left-hand side of the photo there, you can see the lower Cosmiston farmstead, or historic farmstead. It's no longer in use as such. The majority of the site has until recently been in agricultural and equestrian use and comprises of 7 field parcels. The site includes a section of disused railway line, which you can see on the left-hand side of the slide here. Part of the now dormant Lavenot Quarry, a former landfill site known as Cosmiston Number 1 Old Tip, and a number of access tracks and pockets and corridors of woodland and vegetation. Next slide, please. The land has been allocated within the local development plan for 576 houses mentioned before, and is identified within policy MG2 housing allocations, with the area allocated area edged in yellow on the plan before you. To this end, the principle of the quantum of development proposed at the location has already been subject of significant rigour through the LDP process. 1 hectare of the site is allocated to provide a new primary and nursery school, 1 hectare for designated public open space, an additional 0.1 to 0.2 hectares for the provision of a new community facility in accordance with policies MG6, MG28 and MG7. The application site includes lands outside of the allocated site, which can be seen in red on the plan here, which is inclusive of the Lower Cosmiston Farm buildings you can see to the left, and a small area beneath the yellow line centrally, which is well, I'll come on to what it's proposed for in a moment. The additional land includes that designated within the South Penarth to Sully Green Wedge, and land designated as a mineral safeguarding zone for sand and gravel and limestone. Since the submission of the application back in 2020, the original some of the buildings within the Lower Cosmiston Farm have been Grade 2 listed by CADU. Next slide, please, Liam. As noted, the application has been submitted in outline, with the proposals indicating the site being split into 4 distinct areas of residential development, with a design code providing a basis for any subsequent reserved matters submission. Generally, the proposals would comprise of 2 to 3 story development, albeit the scale parameters proposed would allow for a taller landmark 4 to 5 story development adjacent to the area of public open space to the east. Principal areas of open space are shown to the west of the site, adjacent to Lavernock Road, centrally adjacent to the southern edge of the site to the east of the railway line, and also to the east of the site adjacent to the Wales Coastal Path. The submissions also indicate that the historic farmstead to the southwest of the site would be utilised for community, educational, commercial purposes, with the proposed school site being situated adjacent to this, to its eastern side. Next slide, please, Liam. This has informed this indicative master plan that broadly demonstrates that the development of the site could be developed in an appropriate way to facilitate both the quantum of development proposed within the submissions within the 4 distinct character areas, and weighing up other considerations and site constraints within the site. The indicative master plan here also provides a useful context for the relationship with the existing pattern of development to the north, and how it's proposed to retain the central railway corridor, which runs centrally through the site, as an active travel corridor and ecological mitigation. Members may recall a recent committee land to the southern end or very southwest of the site. An application came before them for a new facility to service the Uskall Dairy School, which is also shown on the indicative master plan here, with the broad position of the building there for basically for context. Next slide, please, Liam. Amongst the other parameter plans submitted, the proposals are supported by an access and movement plan, which seeks to demonstrate how the proposals would facilitate active travel movements across the site in both north to south directions along the active travel route along the railway line, and also from east to west to connect the existing coastal path to the west of the site, and facilitate connectivity with Lavernock Road and Cosmiston Lakes beyond. Excuse me. Sorry, the next slide, please, Liam. This shows again an extract from the design and access statement submitted to give a broad context of the position of the site relative to the wider Penarth area and the land to the south. It shows its proximity and walking distances to local services available. Next slide, please, Liam. And then this is a proposed green infrastructure parameter plan, which indicates the retention of significant areas of trees within the confines and hedgerow within the confines of the site, and how it's anticipated that mitigation and enhancement could be achieved within the development, including those which may be lost. Following lengthy consideration and consultation, the proposals before Council considered to comply with requirements of the LDP allocation and within the planning policy framework briefly touched upon previously. Nevertheless, obviously this is an indicative scheme, so and these proposals are an outline, and as such, detailed matters of design, layout, scale, and landscaping would be subject to further consideration at reserve matters stage. The officer's report details how the proposals have been considered in a lieu of a number of technical matters, inclusive of ecology, its coastal location, and historic contamination of the land. And following extensive negotiation and consultation, associated impacts are now considered to be acceptable as detailed within the report and subject to the proposed conditions before members today. Members are also advised that the applicant has agreed to meet the requirements of the site in terms of Section 106 contributions, whilst the application also states that the proposals would provide a 50% affordable housing level, which would exceed that required by MG4 of the LDP. Only 40% can actually be secured through any legal agreement reasonably. To just flag that with members, and the proposed legal agreement, the proposed legal wording of the legal agreement would reflect that. Noting all of the above, officers recommend that the application be approved. Members are, however, advised that this should be subject to consideration by Welsh Government if they want to call the application in. And that's me done.
Thank you, Rob. Right, we do have public speaker on this, and that's Mr. Wallace, if you'd like to come on to screen. Hello, Max. You have 3 minutes from the time you start speaking, and it should indicate on your screen that when your 3 minutes are up. Thank you.
Yes. So we sent in late reps, and I'll speak to those and take questions on them as well. It's Welsh Government land. You'd expect them to ask Transport for Wales if they're interested in their rail service proposed. You'd expect them to ask the Economic Development Minister if he's still interested in tidal energy, because that's been revived by CCR and so on. You'd expect them to ask the countryside section, well, what about the Welsh Coastal Path? It's a jewel supposedly a jewel in our crown. Why aren't they proposing something positive on it? So normally, as we say in the submission, development should not normally be proposed in coastal locations unless it needs to be on the coast. In particular, undeveloped coastal areas will rarely be the most appropriate location for development. That's stated in Planning Policy Wales. There is no answer to it. Being in the LWP does not override the principle. The proposer gives no reasons. This site was inserted at the LWP inquiry stage to make up the numbers. It's not been needed to make up the numbers, and no other reason is given for having this development on the coast. It's urban sprawl, in fact, car dependent. I mean, people from the nearby estate can walk, cycle 2 miles to the Penarth Sound Centre. Some do, but very few. There's no access even to there's no connection even to the Brockhill Rise shop and community centres nearby. Hazardous waste is a big issue, found in the 1980s council tip. The report misleadingly says contaminants of concern. Hazardous waste problems have to be sorted at the outline stage. Specialist consultee English guidance from the noughties, not the Welsh Government's 2012 statutory guidance, and then more recently an update of the development of land affected by contamination Welsh Government guide for developers. So that said, the developer and the environmental consultant need to assess the potential risk from contamination, and this should normally be done before formal planning permission is given for the development. It's not explained why that is not being pursued. they failed in their investigation to determine the hydrological model. And then they failed to find out how the chemicals in the groundwater will leach via groundwater into the Sully Brook. But rather than further investigate, the Welsh Government seems to have just decided or would dispose of the site.
Thank you, Chair. That's 3 minutes. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Wallace. Your 3 minutes, I'm afraid, are up. If you just stay on screen for a moment to see if there are any points of clarification from any members of the committee on what you said. Councillor Perry, you have your hand up. Is this a point of clarification?
Yep, I've got my camera on. Here I am. Just a quick point of clarification. Mr. Wallace mentioned a former council tip. I'm just wondering where in the site it is and how large it is. If someone could perhaps your office could show us a map and point out where this council tip was that has been referred to.
I suspect that's more a question for the officer for after the submission, rather than a point of clarification by Mr. Wallace. Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Wallace, thank you for your time. You can come off screen now, and we'll move on with other contributions. Councillor Marnie, you're a local ward member. I believe you want to speak.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll have to dash through this, so I hope it's not too garbled for the pathetic 3 minutes we're allowed. I shouldn't have to remind anybody, you put in another 600 houses you're proposing to, no doctors, no dentists, no secondary school spaces. We've had, with the development at Cog Road, that would mean 1,200 houses within a mile. These services aren't bust, they're not bursting at the seams, they're gone. We can't get doctors' appointments now. Road infrastructure. I laughingly see something called the active travel plan. Presumably everybody's going to walk and cycle to work, which predicts reducing car travel from 72% to 62% in 5 years. Well, I very much doubt that anyway, but it laughingly then says the plan will be handed over after 5 years to the occupiers, whatever that's supposed to mean. We'll have 2 schools there. We've also got the Ysgol The whole road infrastructure will grind to a halt. There's plans for crossing within 100 yards of the existing crossing. How is that going to work? We've got the flora and fauna report identifying all sorts of animals, including protected dormice and several types of bats. I had to laugh looking at this, a dormouse bridge. Presumably the dormice will be attending an indoctrination session up here to learn how to use this bridge. Quite where they're going to go when they cross over the bridge to their former nest and that, which will be buried below hundreds of tons of concrete, I've absolutely no idea. We have the flawed reports put in by the developers, the heritage report being one, where it said there was nothing of any historical or heritage interest there until we involved the Lambert brothers, the well-known local archaeology guys who got Cadw involved, and that's why Cadw have now imposed protected listed buildings on the farm. That wouldn't have happened without them. How can you trust any of their reports that they've put in? There's nothing independent about a developer paying somebody to put a report in on their behalf. And we come to the flooding that's been touched on. I must confess, and I stand to be correct, I didn't hear Mr. Lancashire even mention the fact that the approach roads are in a C2, C3 flood zone. We had a similar inquiry here several years ago with the proposals of Vale of Glamorgan and the LDP for a traveller site in Hayes Road, where the planning inspector came here and humiliated the entire planning department, including their senior officers, to their face there, I can still see it now, by saying, I will not allow any residential building here on this site when it's served by a C2 flood zone road. Yet, we've got exactly the same situation here with Lavernock Road designated with a flood risk assessment of Wales, of having significant portion of Lavernock Road medium to high risk flood zone and in a C23 flood zone. What is the difference? You had a Welsh Assembly planning inspector banning the planning department from including it in the LDP and it was taken out. You have the exact same situation here with no Welsh Assembly planning inspector. How can you go against that? You're making up their own rules. Of course, we have the
Councillor
infamous...
Marnie, that's your 3 minutes,
Well, that's how ridiculous it is, 3 minutes. One thing I would ask, please, I would like to be asked questions if any member wants to do that, rather than relying on the planning department, the architects of the fiasco down the incinerator, the model farm, Hayes Road. And I would like anybody member to ask him questions. Please let me, who knows the area well, to challenge anything, because that's the other disgrace. They ripped to pieces without
Councillor Marnie,
me having the
your 3
opportunity.
minutes are up. Please sit down.
Yes, but don't you feel it's wrong that the planning officers can challenge what I say, but I can't come back at them? It's a joke, 3 minutes. On a 600 house
Councillor
development.
Marnie, please sit down.
This is like your Uscala Derry Planning Committee meeting, isn't it? That was the most outrageous meeting I've ever seen in my time.
Right, Councillor Rhys-Thomas, you're not a member of the committee and you're asking to speak.
Thank you very much, Chair. Can you see and hear me okay?
Yeah.
Diolch. So there's a number of issues around this development which I hope the committee will consider. Firstly, we've got the impact on public services in the area which are already overstretched. The Chief Executive of the Cardiff and Vale University Health Board has made it clear that there aren't enough GPs in the Penarth area. GP surgeries have been closed down with a proposed wellbeing hub for the Eastern Vale years away from fruition, if indeed it does ever happen. I think several hundred residents into the equation here will make access to health services more difficult, and there is no sign from Welsh Government that there will be adequate funding given to address this problem anytime soon. The development will also exacerbate problems with traffic, particularly on Lavernock Road. We all know that public transport provision in Penarth is far from ideal, and residents have little alternative to using their cars. As a result, the presence of hundreds more people will increase congestion, particularly at peak rush hour times. Increased congestion in this area won't be bad for the environment and will increase journey times for residents trying to get to and from work or school. And this comes amidst warnings from the Confederation of Passenger Transport, who say there is a likelihood of more cuts to bus funding by Welsh Government in the next financial year, damaging services and making it even less likely that Penarth will get the public transport fitting of a town its size. Now, looking at paragraph 8.71 of Planning Policy Wales Edition 9, which is included in the Vale Glamorgan's supplementary planning guidance under the LDP 2011-26, says when determining a planning application for development that has transport implications, local planning authority should take into account the impacts of the proposed development on travel demand, the level and nature of public transport provision, accessibility by a range of different transport modes, and also the environmental impact of both transport infrastructure and the traffic generated. It's clear that on each of these metrics, the implications here are consistently negative. Additionally, there is also the potential for increased flooding risks on various parts of the site and Lavernock Road. As a safety issue, this should be front and centre of any decision by the committee. To quote the report from the head of Sustainable Development, quote, NRW maps also indicate that there is a high risk of surface water flooding in specific areas of the site. Furthermore, the council's operational manager, Highways and Engineering Drainage, wrote there are parts of the site that are at high risk of surface water flooding. There's clearly a flood risk on this site, and the safety of residents should not be compromised for any reason. Then there is also the loss of agricultural land and much valued green spaces in the area. The Wales Coastal Path is also highly valued by residents, and moves to change it could damage a jewel in the crown of the Vale, which is enjoyed by locals and outsiders alike. To finish, the Welsh Government set a target to build 20,000 new low-carbon social homes for rent. In the first 2 years of the Senate term, just 5,775 homes were built. The usefulness of arbitrary targets aside, it is clear the Welsh Government are not on course to meet that 20,000 target. That is down to a lack of preparation and understanding of the issues at hand on their part. To my mind, the land at Upper Cosmoston Farm and Penarth should not be used by the Welsh Government to play catch-up on targets, and the people of the area should be put first. And thank you, Chair, for letting me speak today.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. If you could stay on, and I'll ask any members of the committee who might have points of clarification for either Councillor Marnie or Councillor Rhys-Thomas.
Yeah, no problem.
Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. Just ask Councillor Marnie to elaborate on his points regarding flooding. Was he referring to the site itself or the approach roads around Lavernock Road? And is he referring to surface water flooding? What could you just elaborate a little more on that? Thank you.
Councillor Marnie.
Yes, it's not the site itself, it's the approach road to the surface water. As you'll know, in recent memory, that road has been cut off by the council many times. And in fact, only 2 weeks ago, I was down to less than one lane there with the flood in there. One of the problems is all the surface water there goes into the nearby Sully Brook running to Cosmiston. I just 15 months ago went with a council officer after an arranged appointment with a resident to look at the silting, the desilting they'd done there, and we pointed out that it only desilted to halfway down the drainage pipes running off the road and the surrounding land. And he said, we can't go any lower because we're scared stiff of sending any more water down to Sully Moors Road and flooding the chemical works and the businesses there. That wasn't an off-the-record observation. It was his official statement to myself and the resident who called him in. And this tallies exactly with what I mentioned earlier, with the Hayes Road scenario, with a Welsh Assembly Planning Inspector. So I fail to see how the Planning Department, in the absence of a Welsh Planning Inspector, can come back with a similar plan. Thank you for your question.
Oops, thank you, Councillor Marnie. I see Councillor Ernest, you have your hand up. Is this a point of clarification? Councillor Ernest.
No, Chair, this is to speak. This is to speak, Chairman.
We're not near that yet. It's we'll go to the debate. We'll go to the debate later. If you could put your hand down, then, Anthony. Thank you. Any other points of clarification from either Councillor Marnie or Councillor Rhys-Thomas? I see no other hands. Moving on. We have another. And we don't. We have. Yeah. We have another speaker on behalf of the applicant or the representative, and that's Mr. Barry Davis. Are you with us, Mr. Davis? You can come on.
Hi, Barry. Are you okay to press your request to speak button in the middle of the screen, please? Barry Davis, are you there, please? Thank you, Barry.
Thank you, Chair.
Go ahead.
Are you ready?
Your time will start when you start speaking.
Okay, diolch, Chair and members of committee. This outline application has been long in the making, comprising 2 years of pre-application discussion and a further 3 years since we submitted the application. In that time, we've undertaken extensive engagement with the community and extensive discussions with the LPA and its consultees to reach this point where the development proposal before you is acceptable to your officers. The site is allocated within the adopted LDP for up to 576 homes and a primary school. The adopted plan has been subject to thorough examination by a planning inspector, and there cannot be any doubt over the principle of this type and quantum of development on this site. In line with the adopted LDP, this outline application proposes 576 homes, including a substantial number of affordable homes. The Penarth, Sully and Landock area has one of the highest levels of affordable housing need in the Vale, with 1,125 households currently on the waiting list in these wards alone. The affordable housing requirement for this area is set at 40%, but Welsh Government's aspiration is that 50% affordable housing should be delivered, and this site will therefore provide up to 288 affordable homes for local people. The development will also provide a £7.8 million Section 106 contribution towards new public school on the site, sustainable transport improvements, coastline monitoring and public art. Whilst the total site area is around 25 hectares, the net developable area is less than 16 hectares, as the application includes over 9 hectares of new and retained habitats, comprising community gardens, wetlands, orchards, and open space, and proposes 6,000 square metres net increase in new hedgerows. The layout provides pedestrian and cycle routes that link with existing routes, including the coastal path, and include the extension of National Cycle Route number 88, providing a direct active travel corridor to Penarth Town Centre, supported by a contribution of £1.3 million for sustainable transport provision. A package of off-site highways improvement works have also been agreed with the Highways Authority, including works to the junction of Lavenock Road and Westbourne Road. The Highways Authority confirmed no objection to the development. The outline planning application is supported by a robust design code, providing a framework for future developers to prepare reserve matters applications, including a route to achieve net zero carbon development. In conclusion, following extensive consultation with the local authority and their consultees, an outline application is presented to members, which is considered to be acceptable in all regards. We therefore respectfully request that the application is approved in line with the planning officer's recommendation. Diolch.
Thank you, Mr. Davies, with 5 seconds to spare. Right. Are there any points of clarification from members of the committee? Councillor Perry, you have your hand up. Is that a point of clarification?
Yeah, a few questions, if you don't mind, because it's going to be 50% affordable housing because the Welsh Government owns land and has a lot of control over this. So why are we not going for 100% affordable housing given the shortfall? That would be my first question. Can I ask my second question later, or shall I just run my questions off?
I'm happy to answer that, Councillor Perry. Yeah.
Go on, Mr. Davies.
Yeah, thank you. As I've said, the actual Vale Glamorgan requirement is 40%, but Welsh Government, as the applicant, wishes subsequent developers to develop it at 50%. There's an acknowledgement that this site also needs to be viable for the development industry, and that's why the percentage of affordable housing has been set at 50%. Any more than that, and we might have issues with site viability, and we're also seeking to secure a mix of tenures and demographics across the site. So 50% is considered to be an appropriate mix in this case.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Davies. Councillor Perry, you said you had a number of questions. Could you sort of whittle them down a little?
Yeah, not very many, don't worry. The second one is, I think it's going to be 9 hectares of public open space will be provided, which includes hedgerows. And I'm just wondering, because obviously the Welsh Government doesn't fund the Vale Glamorgan Council very well, and we're desperately short, and we stick to our council tax, where the money will come from to maintain this extra area of open space and maintain the art and also run a school into the future. Because if things carry on like this the next 10, 15, 20 years, where there's this big squeeze and council tax gets pushed up and services get cut,
Councillor Perry,
I don't see how we run.
Councillor Perry, I don't think that those are points of clarification. I don't think that's a point of clarification. That's a question for debate.
Well, I don't know if you debate it. He should have done the figures, shouldn't he? They should. The Welsh Government should have a knowledge of how much this is going to cost to run and whether the Vale Glamorgan can actually afford it. Because we hit a target and then we can't afford it, and we have big further cuts because we can't afford to maintain this public open space we're going to get. Can't afford to maintain the school we're going to get. Look at our school budgets.
Okay, yeah? Mr. Davis, are you in a position to answer Mr. Perry, Councillor Perry's question?
I'll certainly give it a go, Chair. Well, as I've mentioned, there is a desperate need for not only housing but affordable housing, and this development on this allocated site will seek to deliver that. As part of the development, we've made great strides in trying to provide a development that's going to be attractive to those people that are living there, and not just suburban sprawl extending out of Penarth. For that reason, there is lots of public open space provided, which is a requirement of the Vale LDP. And lots of investment in maintaining and creating new habitat on the site, which again is a requirement increasingly through Welsh Government, through updates to PPW, etc. But the development will be accompanied by a Section 106 agreement that will secure £7.8 million worth of funding, and that will go towards the new primary school, the sustainable transport improvements, and things like the public art. So this development isn't coming forward in isolation. There's a robust package of financial contributions that come with it. And it'll also see significant construction investment in the local community. Obviously, there'll be residents will be paying their council tax, etc. It doesn't come forward in isolation, and due consideration has been given for those other factors.
Okay,
thank you very much.
Your final quick question. You mentioned net zero development, although you're putting in space for private car ownership to continue rather than a car club. What sort of thinking is going into the choice of materials and the disposal of the spoil? Because obviously what developers do is they come in, they strip away the topsoil and they shift it somewhere, and there's a carbon footprint of that and flooding risk from that. And I'm just wondering if that's been factored in the choice of this site and the proposal in front of us tonight.
Thank you, Councillor. Well, I think that's a level of detail that will come forward through Reserve Matters application. That said, this master plan has been very carefully considered to try and minimise the amount of cut and fill and movement of material that will be required across the site. You can see through the design and access statement and through the design code that there's been lots and lots of detailed consideration given to the way in which development has been planned to work with the contours of the site so as to minimise the need for any disposal of materials off-site. There's a significant amount of open space being provided on this site, so I think there's a reasonable chance that there won't need to be a significant amount of spoil taken off-site. I'd like to think that it could be accommodated within the site boundary. Hope that answers your question.
Cool, yeah, and will light spill be taken into consideration as well, and the choice of lighting in public areas?
Yes, absolutely. I would imagine that there will be conditions imposed on Reserve Matters, or indeed details required at Reserve Matters stage, which will require details of external lighting. In any event, it's standard good practice these days that we adopt the standards set out in the BATs and lighting standards advocated by the Bat Conservation Trust, which encourage sort of down lighting and bat-friendly lighting.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Councillor Buckley, you have your hand up. Is this a point of clarification? Councillor Buckley.
Sorry. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Barry. You said about improving the junction of Westbourne Road and Lavernock Road. The report, there was a few queries about the junction of further up Lavernock Road onto Dennis Road and that. Will you be doing any improvements here as well?
Possibly. There are conditions imposed on the outline consent, which have been agreed with highways officers and with Rob, your planning officer, which set out a number of conditions which will try and secure those off-site highways improvements to the Lavernock Road, Westbourne Road junction, and anywhere else where it may be required as a result of this development.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Davis. I think that's all points of clarification. You may go dark again, and we move on. We move on now to Rob. If you want to come in on any of the comments by speakers.
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a few. So if I do miss any, I do apologise. So I mean, first of all, in terms of the Wales Coastal Path and kind of enhancement of the setting and what have you, I know that was one thing that Mr. Wallace mentioned. The indicative master plan does show an area to the east of the site and of open space whereby a realigned coastal path could be provided and would be provided in due course. Because the existing coastal path is actually getting closer, or is reasonably close in places to the cliff edge. So this would provide the realignment of the Wales Coastal Path within a kind of enhanced parkland setting. I appreciate Wales Coast Path in many locations is in rural areas where there isn't development, but clearly on Whitcliffe Drive, further to the north of the site, the Wales Coast Path coexists with the residential development site. Not necessarily sure I would 100% agree that it's the kind of death nail in the Wales Coastal Path. In terms of Transport for Wales, and the point raised there, I mean, the application has been subject of kind of extensive consultation with various parts of the council, including our operational manager for transport services, whilst the applicant is Welsh Government, of which Transport for Wales are part. So I'm just looking at something here that I looked at earlier. So the active operational manager for transport services actually advised us that the active travel route will be funded by Welsh Government along the railway route there. It's supported by the Transport for Wales active travel team, and they advised that the extension of the rail link along Railway Walk was actually sifted out at a previous stage of work that was undertaken by consultants for Transport for Wales. So furthermore, there's not, with the exception of the road that crosses the is proposed to cross the railway line centrally running through the site. It doesn't strictly preclude any potential avenue for that in the future. There's no development proposed within the historic railway corridor. Clearly the railway does not come to the north of the site and stop there. It's currently obviously would have to go all the way up to Penarth town centre itself. And similarly, in terms of the comments made with regard to the barrage, I don't think there's any formal schemes before us at this point. Welsh Government do still own the land, and again, I don't think it necessarily, given that it is allocated for as a to provide housing within the local development plan, this doesn't represent a reason that we should withhold planning permission at this time. Moving on to a few of the other bits. So I know Councillor Perry asked for some clarification about the historic land use. I'm going to try and share this plan, which hopefully, so I don't know if, Gareth, do you need to let me share the screen, or I've clicked on the share screen button,
we'll give permission now, Rob.
Okay, so I don't know which screen it's going to share, so just bear with me one moment. I'm on to it doesn't seem to be, I don't know, can you see anything? Sorry, it doesn't seem to be
nothing's coming up yet,
showing
Rob.
anything currently. I think here we go, right, I found
That's
it. Sorry,
it's up.
Can you see it there?
Yes.
So as you can see from that plan, that shows the position of the historic land uses. So you've got the old quarry in the northern part of the site here, which actually isn't being developed. That's being shown as being retained as green. The historic landfill quarry area here. There's indication of some infilling here, but certainly this seems to be the area of most concern, this historic quarry and landfill area there, which, and obviously you can see there's been boreholes and things taken and measurements taken throughout the site elsewhere. So yeah, I hope that gives some context in terms of this area here. I guess just for clarity, these areas are shown as, this is the area of open space within the centre of the site. So in terms of kind of more sensitive uses, it's not within that greyed out area there. So hopefully Councillor Perry will find that helpful. In terms of the land contamination, so I should have stopped sharing now. There we go. The assessments have been undertaken. There has been site investigations undertaken by the applicant, technical consultees, including our shared regulatory services and Natural Resources Wales, have been consulted with regard to these and are satisfied that the risks involved with these can be.
Rob, we've lost you. Rob, can you get back on?
the share screen.
Rob, can you come back on?
Back on.
Hello. Sorry. I don't know what happened there. I don't know if Gareth, did I exceed my 3 minutes? I don't know whether I got chucked out. But yes, so it has been undertaken by NRW and SRS, and a strong suite of conditions have been proposed, including remediation and verification works. I think officers are very much of the mind that a policy compliant outcome is possible. Further details would be provided by any technical submissions would be required prior to kind of any further work at the site. I know Councillor Perry was asking about lighting. There are 2 conditions on the existing plan with regard to lighting in terms of sensitivity for bats. That's obviously recognised as part of the scheme already, and obviously there would be further lighting schemes required as part of any highways approval associated with the site, and that would include things submitted as part of the conditions. So yes, transport assessment. I was going to touch. Barry's actually done what in terms of the off-site works. There are 2 conditions attached for the permission with regard to off-site works at the Lavernock Road and Westbourne Road junctions, and the Lavernock Road and Dinas Road and Victoria Road junctions to facilitate that. Councillor Marnie raised some concern about the dormice using the bridge. I mean, again, the plan is very much indicative at this point. I think the suggestion of the dormice bridge was as a form of art, kind of a dual piece of artwork and kind of ecological mitigation. It doesn't say that it have to be wedded to that. Again, there are conditions attached or proposed to be attached to the any permission with regard to ecological management through the site, and that includes a specific plan relating to dormice. So clearly, and that has been requested at by NRW, and that would be include new survey work associating any reserve matters applications. So it's not to say, again, it's an indicative master plan. It's not to say the Dormouse Bridge is exactly in the guise it would be. It would have to be designed to natural resources wells satisfaction if that was going to be a feature that was integrated within the scheme. In terms of archaeology, Glamorgan Gwent Archaeological Trust were made aware of the independent surveys, and their position stayed the same as prior to seeing those, and they recommend condition with regard to a written scheme investigation or further scheme investigation as part of the work. List of buildings now shown to be retained. Just a point of clarification, it's not C2 flood zone along the front of the site, it's flood zone B, which has significantly lower issues associated with it. Surface water flooding is identified in that area. Again, this has been something with been extensive consultation with our drainage colleagues with regard to anything here, and they are satisfied that a drainage scheme can be achieved which doesn't would suitably mitigate that, and that they've been through a pre-application in terms of the SAB approval. So it's a slightly different context to the other site at Cog Road, who I believe was dealt with by the same inspector, although I could be wrong. And yeah, I think that was all the points of clarification I've jotted down. So sorry if there were any I missed, but there were quite a few. So if there were, just please come back to me.
My mic now. Thank you, Rob. In that case, we move on to the debate. So if councillors could put their hands up if they wish to speak. Councillor Cave, yours is the first. Councillor Cave?
Chair, can you see me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, thank you. I was taken by surprise there, Chair, because you don't often call me first. I'm usually right down
you were first up. I take them in order.
I don't often get the opportunity to go first. I have lots of questions about this application. And I don't really think that the majority of them, some have already been raised, but I don't really think they've been given sufficient answers for me to feel satisfied that this development should go ahead. I really do think that if Welsh Government was serious about sustainable transport, and net zero, one of the things they might be doing with their piece of land, because it is their piece of land, isn't it? they might be looking at sustainable transport for future generations. And we do have the Future Generations Act 2015, which is quoted in our report here. And I'm not really sure that we meet some of the obligations of that act, because if we have to protect for future generations things like sustainable transport, then surely one of the things that we would be doing is we would be protecting this railway line for future generations for sustainable transport. One of the other things that we might be doing, if Welsh Government were really serious about sustainable transport, is that we might be thinking a net zero. We might be thinking about the barrage and how this piece of land would sit within any construction and infrastructure around a barrage. You know, at one stage, I think probably about 10, 12 years ago, what the barrage would have done for Wales is given us a large proportion of our electricity needs. And that would really have helped the people living in Wales, because they wouldn't have had the high energy costs. So I do think this application doesn't really fit with some of the things that we're supposed to do in terms of being compliant with our Future Generations Act. The other things that I'm concerned about, I'm concerned that we constantly keep putting schools in places where there is insufficient highways infrastructure, and then we just move away and we just leave it for those people that are left behind to deal with that problem. We have a similar problem in Colwinston. We are now developing a similar problem in Bombleston. So what we keep doing as a committee, we keep being told that we don't have to worry about the infrastructure. We don't need to have to worry about the roads. We just need to take the money from Welsh Government so that we can build a nice new school, and then let everybody else, all the parents, all the children, all the staff, all the people that already live in the area, deal with the problems of lack of highways resources. And so I am very, very concerned that once again, as a committee, we are being asked to rubber stamp something that is not going to work for the people that already live there and the people that are going to be asked to live there. The other question I have is about the coastal pathway. Now, I saw on the plan that was put up on the screen that we are going to have some low hedge, put in along the coastal pathway so that people can have views across the sea or the channel. And I am concerned that the coastal pathway is being in some way tampered with because of that. I also wonder, when does a coastal path become not a coastal path? In other words, if we deviate this coastal path away from the coast, can it really be still called a coastal path? So my question is, how much is this coastal path going to be moved? And obviously, you know, the coastal path is always under pressures from erosion. And then that brings me to the question of, are we actually putting houses along a coastal path, which is going to be moved and maybe not be a coastal path, and then actually in future years, for our Future Generations Act, put people in houses that are going to fall into the sea? The other thing that I want to raise around the Future Generations Act is around the loss of agricultural land, because there will be a loss of agricultural land. You know, in our report here, we say agricultural land quality. So what we're asking to look at here is the quality of the agricultural land that is being lost, rather than the fact that there will be a loss for future generations of agricultural land. Now, how are future generations supposed to look after their food needs if we go building on every piece of agricultural land that Welsh Government own? And finally, I'd like to say, at the last committee meeting, we were told by the Audit Office that have come in and looked at the Vale of Glamorgan Planning Department that one of the things we were to stop doing is allowing officers to pass their own applications. And I would say Welsh Government actually here could be falling foul of something very similar, where they are actually passing an application on a piece of land that they own, and the only remit that I can see that they are using in terms of this application is how much money will they be able to get for this piece of land at the end of it, not possibly what the best use is for our Future Generations Act. So a number of questions. I'm sure I'll have more, but I'll leave that with you for the moment.
Thank you, Councillor Cave. We're having technical problems, I understand, with a number of councillors dropping out and officers as well. I'm just wondering whether they can be resolved or whether we need to stop this meeting now and restart within the next week or so to see if we can iron out the difficulties. Councillor Wilson, you're trying to say something? Councillor Wilson, we can't hear you.
Okay, sorry. I'd like to make a proposal that we actually reconvene this meeting. There's clearly a lot of technical issues at this meeting, and I would suggest that we can reconvene it at a suitable time because the technology is really not there for this meeting. Sorry.
Yeah, Councillor Hodges.
Chairman, I've got no issue with that, but I would ask that, and I'm going to be shouted at, but that councillors actually attend in person, because that's what we've been talking about for such a long time. There's 3 of us in the chamber that are voting members of this committee.
In that case, as I can see one hand up now. Councillor Perry, do you want to comment on this?
Am I here? Yeah, can you hear me? Yeah,
yes.
Well, my tech's working fine. In another meeting, I had an issue with my phone, but with the laptop, it works fine. And with the last meeting, I had to hotspot from my phone to give internet access to my laptop to access it. So from my point of view here, everything is working fine. I have a concern that if we reschedule for next week, then we have to really restart, which means bringing back all the people who have already spoken, the external people, the residents and the applicant will have to come back, because we can't guarantee we'll be the same people here. Already members have not heard everything, so they can't vote. So halfway through the consideration of a planning application isn't really a good time to say, well, we'll continue this meeting.
I agree with you, Councillor Perry. Unfortunately, that's the situation we're faced with. We in the chamber aren't having problems either, particularly, but we are having a lot of problems with people from at home, and it's. I think we need to adjourn and reconvene as soon as possible. Pardon? Mark has moved it, and I'll second it. I'm sorry about this for everybody, particularly the members of the public who were interested in the items we've got. But we will let you know. If you leave your names and addresses with our democratic officers, we'll let you know when the next meeting is or when the reconvene meeting will take place. In the meantime, Councillor Kay, if you have your hand up as well.
Yes, sorry, Chair. I'm not in agreement with us rescheduling this meeting at all. I think that what we need to do as a committee is we need to decide who is in the meeting and who isn't in the meeting. And then we need to get democratic services to get those people that are not in the meeting to actually be in the meeting, whether that means that they leave their computers and come down. I do not think it is a good idea to halt a meeting in the middle of a planning decision.
I agree, but unfortunately we are faced with what we're faced with. Councillor Wilson, you want to speak?
Yes, I do. I'd just like some clarification. There are lots of members who can't get in. They will not have the opportunity to vote on such a motion. My understanding is that you as chair have the power to reconvene this without going through this. Obviously, you've got democratic officers around you that can advise you on this important point.
We have been in discussion. The advice is that we adjourn and reconvene, and I therefore adjourn this meeting, and we will reconvene at mutually well, at the next available date. Thank you very much.